Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Palmetto Sports Daily. Rick Henry here in Columbia, and joined today by Ella Grogan in Greenville, Teagan Brown in Myrtle Beach, and Kevin Bilodeau in Charleston. Hope all of you are having a wonderful week. And finally, the long wait is over for South Carolina football. This morning, the South Carolina Board of Trustees Governance Committee approved the hiring of 3 new football assistants, including offensive coordinator Kendall Briles, who spent the last 3 seasons at Texas Christian University, and he receives a 3-year deal with a starting base salary of $2 million, and it goes up to 2.1 for the second year. 2.3, 2.2 for the third. And of course, he can also earn bonuses along the way. And also being hired today, a new offensive line coach, Randy Clements, and he receives a 2-year deal with a base salary of $725,000. And Stan Drayton is hired as a running backs coach and also assistant head coach, and he receives a 3-year deal with a starting base salary of $775,000. And there will be an introductory press conference tomorrow morning where they will meet with the media and they'll be asked all kinds of questions. And I'm sure that the new offensive coordinator, Mr. Briles, is going to be asked about Lenore Sellers, because that's probably the next big decision we're waiting on. Is Lenore going to stay, enter the transfer portal, or enter the NFL draft? Kevin?
Yeah, Rick, it feels like there's a chance that this is the most important hire Shane Beamer is going to make in his tenure at South Carolina, because if this one doesn't work out the way the last couple haven't worked out, I don't think he's going to get a chance to make another hire as an offensive coordinator. And I've touched on this before this week, but I'm not sure that this is the right guy, because I look at what the TCU people are saying, and they are not upset about losing Kendall Briles. So I'm not sure who a better candidate would have been, but I know if the school he is at isn't upset to lose him, then how good of a hire could it be, Ella?
Yeah, no, that's the question we all have to be asking ourselves here. And also, I think back to the press conference after the Palmetto Bowl, where both Shane Beamer and Lenoris talked a little bit about how big of a process how big Lenoris has been in this process in selecting the offensive coordinator. A little bit of vague answers there. So, Rick, that kind of goes back to what you were saying. How big of a part is Lenoris playing in this? And is this going to be something that keeps him around or pushes him even further out the door?
I don't know if we can say just because Briles was hired as offensive coordinator, or if someone else didn't get the job, that would make a big factor in Lenoris's decision. Of course, it'll be a big component of it, but he's talking to his family, talking to his team on whether, is it a good decision for him to stay? Does he need to go somewhere else to finish up his college career? Or if you think you're going to be a high draft pick in the NFL draft, make the decision to turn pro. But I'm sure he's involved in the conversations with Shane Beamer, and I'm sure one of the first things that Coach Briles is going to do is sit down face-to-face with Lenoris and just hash things out.
Yeah, and hopefully it's just an open and honest conversation there, talking too about what Lenoris wants out of his offense this coming year, especially after the year that they just went through with those high expectations. I don't know if I necessarily see Lenoris declaring for the draft this year, and I don't know if I want him to. I want his draft stock to go back up. I want him to give it another year at the college level, whether that's at South Carolina or somewhere else, obviously still up for debate. But, yeah, I think it's just we'll have to wait and see what the new OC says tomorrow. Of course, I'm sure he'll be asked about it and if he's talked to Lenoris at all. But, Rick, still a lot of question marks.
Yeah, a lot of question marks too, but I think Shane wanted to go ahead and get all 3 of these coaches hired, because now you don't have his own players wondering, okay, who's going to be the O-line coach? Who's going to be the running backs coach? You've got guys who maybe want to transfer to South Carolina, and you still have to send messages to your high school recruits about what direction this program is going in. So, a lot of things that have to work out. Right now it seems like, okay, you got the coaches hired, but there's still some questions out there. So, but at least Shane got the most important piece, the offensive coordinator. Okay, and while the Gamecocks aren't going to a bowl after finishing 4-8, South Carolina State, well, they are already in Atlanta preparing for the Celebration Bowl Saturday at noon against Prairie View A&M. Now, this game decides the national championship for your historically black colleges and universities. South Carolina State won it in 2021 under then head coach Buddy Bue, where they knocked off a Jackson State team that was led by Deion Sanders, and Shedeur Sanders was his quarterback. And last year, Shinnisberry's first year in Orangeburg, they went to the Celebration Bowl. They lost to Jackson State. And Coach Berry says he learned some things then about preparing for a bowl, but he's just excited to get back to the ATL and get another shot at trying to bring a natty back to Orangeburg.
Man, this is great for the community, man. The whole state of South Carolina, the city of Orangeburg, all the alumni, fans, all the people that support South Carolina State University. But it's an opportunity to go to Atlanta, man, and a national stage. In terms of a lot of people, it's not just, the PV fans will be there. The South Carolina State fans will be there. It's like a melting pot. If you know anything about Atlanta, man, it's like a melting pot of HBCUs. People from all over the country that went to different HBCUs across the country come right back there for that event.
We're excited about the opportunity to go to Atlanta. People have been sending me things that I guess that I said a long time ago about being in this moment. We certainly believe those things when we said it, and here we are sitting today with the opportunity to play for the national championship against a really good football team that I've got a lot of respect for their staff and the way that they play.
Okay, South Carolina State finishes 9-3, winning the MEAC for the second straight year, and they have experience playing in large environments. They played at South Carolina, and they also played at South Florida. So I really like the Bulldogs' chances of going to Atlanta and bringing back a national championship. Teagan?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it on the show and just how motivating Chennis Berry is, especially in all of those sound bites that we hear on the show. So, hopefully those guys are ready to run through a wall after hearing their head coach. Hopefully they can get that big win there. And Kevin, it would be a great thing for them to bring that back to Orangeburg.
It would. Bringing a second national championship in a 5-year span is really impressive, and especially doing it under a whole different regime. And one of the things I was thinking about is as Chennis Berry is now wrapping up his second year in Orangeburg and 2 trips to the Celebration Bowl, I'm surprised that no other school has called and asked about him. We don't know that they haven't, I guess, but, we haven't heard his name pop up in any of the openings. And it seems like a school like Coastal Carolina, Teagan, might be a good fit for him. This is a guy who walks in and leads a team that wasn't his. It was a lot of Buddy Pugh's guys, leads him to a Celebration Bowl last year. Then he pretty much revamps this entire squad this year with his own guys, and he gets them right back there. So it seems like a step up is something that a school should be willing to give a guy like Chennis a shot.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that the fans have talked a lot about. His name has been thrown out there on Twitter for a couple of reasons, because a lot of Coastal fans, when they're talking about what they want in this new head coach, they want somebody with head coaching experience. Tim Beck didn't have that. He had been a coordinator in a ton of places, but he hadn't been a head coach before. And then the other word that people keep continually bringing up for what they want in this new coach at Coastal is culture. And I think Chennis Berry really does embody that. He brings a very specific vibe to his teams and a type of culture. So I think that, he would be a good option. I don't necessarily think he's the option that Coastal is going with, but yeah, I mean, I'm surprised that he hasn't found another landing spot yet outside of SC State. But again, we don't know who's reached out to him, Rick.
And then you look at the way he develops quarterbacks and the offense that he runs. The Bulldogs play a very exciting brand of football, and I'm very impressed by what he's done with his quarterbacks, both at SC State and Benedict. That's going to wrap up the opening segment of Palmetto Sports Daily. We'll call our first time out, and we'll be right back.
Welcome back to Palmetto Sports Daily. We've talked South Carolina. Now it's time to go national a bit. The biggest news probably right now in sports circulating around. I was asked to bring it in as the Ohio State fan from producer Nick, but we're going to keep this one professional and stick to the stats on this. Obviously, huge news. Former Michigan football coach, Coach Moore, you can't call him that former because it happened literally less than 24 hours at this point. He was fired. He walked off the football field and pretty much walked straight into jail. From the Michigan public statement, they said it was for what was inappropriate relationships with a staff member, not releasing a whole lot of other information than that, but we know that he was booked into jail, into a facility on Wednesday evening. The jail records have not been released. There has been no text messages released. We're still waiting on a lot of information on this, but Kevin, I know you've got some thoughts on this one, and I'm going to send this one right on over to you.
I mean, this has a chance to be one of the most scandalous events we've ever seen in college football, which is saying something because college football is crazy with stories like this. But, I mean, to see the downfall in 6 hours from the time he was fired to the time he ends up in police custody, we have never seen anything like that. And you put aside everything that happened in his personal life and what's happening with him now, the vibrations you can feel of this in college football could be enormous, depending on who Michigan brings in. And if they bring in another head coach, the job that opens up there and the dominoes that could fall from this entire, alleged incident and what has happened and what hasn't happened. Like you said, we don't know completely yet, but there are so many layers to this story, and the way it could affect college football for a long time is really fascinating, Rick.
Kevin, when you look at Michigan, one of the blue blood programs of college football, and how, just look at what happened and all the news that broke in just one day. The guy's life just falling apart. He loses the job as Michigan's head coach, making over $5 million a year. And God knows what's going to happen as far as his family relationship, but just his public image, his reputation. Of course, we have to wait until all the facts are revealed. And when he has his day in court, since he's been arrested. But you're right. This is one of the biggest scandals I've ever seen in college football. And I'm sure Michigan, they want to go after a big-name coach, which means someone else is going to have to find a big-name coach. And it's, like you said, Kevin, just dominoes.
And speaking of those dominoes, I mean, you have to think of the repercussions of something of this large of a scale. I think about this team to begin with this year has already been struggling and not meeting the expectations that they were projected to have. And then having something like this happen, I mean, how do you keep a team together after this? How do you not see huge majorities of this team going into the transfer portal and wanting to get out of an environment? I mean, I don't know, Teagan.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, whatever coaching change is going to come next, just in terms of who's going to take over as head coach, they're going to change the staff. They're going to have a different idea of the players that they want there. And, going back to the whole scandal, I wouldn't be surprised if in the next few days we see a couple of other staffing changes at Michigan. If there's some sort of involvement that they're investigating in terms of, maybe people who knew about this or had information about it that they hadn't revealed it or anything like that. So, there's a lot of unknown information at the moment. And obviously all of those Freedom of Information Act or FOIAs have to go through to get what, the journalists are trying to get for information in this. But still a lot of unknowns, Kevin.
Yeah, you touched on something else, Teagan, is who knew what and when. And the big problem for Michigan right now might be, when did their AD know about this? Because there's rumors that he knew way back in maybe the late summer about what was going on between the coach and perhaps some of his subordinates. And if he did know, are you going to let him be the one to hire the next head coach, which seems to be its own problem? And then if you don't let him hire the next head coach, is it the president of the school who makes that hire? Is it an interim? Is it a search firm who makes their recommendation? There's just, like I said, so many layers of where this could go wrong. And like if you're a coach, Kalen DeBoer's name from Alabama has been a guy whose name has been linked to this job since the moment it opened. If you're him, and even if he's not happy at Alabama, which I don't know, obviously, but let's say that he's not for the sake of this argument, do you want to go to a job where there's this many uncertainties, even if it is Michigan, like you said, Rick, even if it is one of the blue bloods and one of the top tier jobs in all of college football? There's so many unknowns right here with what's going on. It might be hard for them to lure a top head coach to this job.
Again, yeah, do you want to go to Michigan? Because you don't know what that roster is going to look like. And this morning I was thinking about Julian Walker, the Dutch Fork defensive end, who last week flipped from Michigan to South Carolina. I bet he's breathing a sigh of relief because now guys that sign with Michigan, since the coach is no longer there, they can enter the transfer portal before they even attend a class. So just an awful time to be a fan of the Michigan Wolverines or anyone involved with that program. Producer Nick, did you say go to a break? Yes, he did. And I always do what Producer Nick says. So we're going to take a commercial timeout.
Welcome back into Palmetto Sports Daily. We're talking some basketball after talking about some controversy in football in the last discussion. For Conway, for Coastal Carolina, the women were at home last night starting a 6 home game stretch. So luckily they'll have lots of time in front of Teal Nation, get the energy that they can in all these games. They got a win 67-61 over UNCG last night, which was something that they really needed after a tough loss at Jacksonville University in their previous matchup. Head coach Kevin Pedersen had said that was really Coastal's worst game all season. They just couldn't figure out how to work together. They couldn't figure out how to get to the basket. So it was a bit of a struggle for them there. But, I mean, this is something that Pedersen has talked about in the beginning of the season. It would take them some time to find their chemistry, to find the way that they all work together. The Chants were actually down 25-24 at halftime, and then they ended up outscoring UNCG 24-19 in the third quarter to, get the lead that they needed to, and then they closed it out in the fourth quarter with 19 more points there. So Coastal actually opens Sunbelt play for their next game. They're hosting JMU, one of the better teams in the Sunbelt for women's basketball, so that'll be a challenge for them as they still kind of try to figure out their identity. So still some question marks for Coastal Carolina, but we'll have to see what they can do against JMU, Kevin.
Yeah, and big news here in the Low Country as we switch over to soccer as the Charleston Battery announcing yesterday morning that they have signed their head coach Ben Pierman to a multi-year extension that's going to keep him here in the Low Country for at least the next couple of seasons. That's big news for the Battery because Pierman has been maybe the best coach in the entire USL Championship League since he came on 3 years ago. The Battery have finished in the top 3 of the standings each season since Pierman has been there. They're the only team in the entire USL Championship to accomplish that. And in those 3 seasons, he's taken them to a championship game, to the Eastern Conference Finals, and back to the playoffs one more time. So big news for the Battery is they're going to keep their coach around. And it was a big deal because I know there have been talks of him maybe moving on to the MLS, either as an assistant or even as a head coach. There's been a lot of interest in him going around, but he wants to stay here in Charleston. He's helped build a lot of guys as top scorers, including Cam Jennings last year, who was the Golden Boot winner in the league. So excellent news for the Battery going forward for the next couple of years, Ella.
Yeah, staying on soccer here in the Upstate, we obviously have some really exciting stuff going on here. Furman men's soccer has made it to the College Cup. They're in the Final Four of the NCAA tournament. I've had the opportunity to pretty much follow these guys along all season long, and I was at their send-off just a couple days ago, and you see this video here now. These guys are just absolutely stoked. This is their first time making it to the College Cup ever in program history, and this is a crazy stat as well. It is the furthest a team has made it in the SoCon of any sport in the NCAA tournament in 67 years. So these guys are just so pumped up, and I'm so incredibly happy for them. An amazing team, a young team as well. I spoke with Coach Doug Allison about the fact that 5 of his starters are freshmen, and they're performing so incredibly well under the spotlight, and proven age doesn't mean anything to them.
They are young. I mean, I'm still learning some of their names, but we're changing diapers at halftime. I mean, they're really young kids, but they're good. They believe in themselves. They're special kids. They're terrific student athletes. I kind of figured as they were going through it, you know, going through the regular season, we played a really tough schedule. So it kind of set us up for that. So winning Division I games isn't easy. So that kind of set us up. And then as we got through and won the regular season crown, I was like, they're a pretty special group. They've made their mark. Well, and they're like, Coach, that's not enough. You know, so then they won the conference tournament. I'm like, that's great, guys. They're like, Coach, that's not enough. You know, and then we got a bye. We got a number one. We got a seed, and then we were ranked number 1 in the country in one of the polls, which has never happened here. And then like, Coach, that's not enough. We're going for it. You know.
What would be enough to these guys, they tell me, is doing this thing for Doug. It is head coach Doug Allison's last year after being on this team and serving this team for 31 years as the head coach. So an unbelievable story here, rooting for them tomorrow as they play Washington at 6 o'clock. But for now, we're going to take a timeout and send it to break.
Welcome back to Palmetto Sports Daily. We wrap things up today with some hockey as the South Carolina Stingrays in action last night at home against the Orlando Solar Bears. Some big hits in this one. Wanted to show you a couple of the highlights as the Rays back at home and earning a big-time win. Head coach Warsofsky not happy, and you're about to see why, as this is Tanner Edwards going in for a big-time hit right there, putting a guy down, and the Solar Bears weren't having it. They pretty much all jump on Edwards right here. A fight occurs. This is one of 2 fights Edwards had in the first period alone. Stingrays would give up the first goal of the game. They would score 6 consecutive after that as they go on for a 6-1 victory over the Solar Bears at home last night. That's going to wrap it up here for Palmetto Sports Daily. We will see you back here tomorrow. If you haven't already, go and download our podcast and listen on the go. Everyone have a great day.